So, where we left off, we had just talked about fish, and we had just said you need to stop and listen to You Enjoy Myself by Fish. So, again, just like the first video, the second video, you are going to need to stop and listen anytime you have an excerpt come up. Again, this is borders on copyright infringement. So just to avoid YouTube trying to flag the videos, that's why I don't insert any of the listening excerpts. So more improvisation styles that the book doesn't address, but you need to be aware of are going to be old time music. Um, and so old time music specifically is going to be a social event or music that's played at a social event. All of this kind of music traditionally is going to be learned by ear. So it's going to be an oral um, experience passed on. We talk about folk tunes or folk music in general being an oral experience. Old time music definitely falls within that vein. So, with old time music too, there isn't an expectation of formal training required. There are some places now where you can earn degrees in old time music, like Berkeley. Um, and so, anyways, it at least initially, this was just something that was self-taught. Subgenres of old time music we can find are going to be Appalachian, Athabascan fiddle, New England fiddle, Midwest, and Canadian um, old time music, but specifically looking at Nova Scotia, which is going to be in Eastern Canada. Okay, so here you are going to need to stop and listen to The Volunteer by Natalie and Brittany Haas. This is going to be a piece of music that you can't find on the playlist. However, if you type all of this in into YouTube, it will pull the video right up. Okay, so Irish fiddle is again going to be music played at a social gathering. And so again, like the other old time, it's going to be learned and played by ear. A lot of people have gone through and written this music down as a means for other people to learn it. However, again, traditionally, this is going to be learned and played by ear. Fiddle music in general, but Irish fiddle specifically, is going to not utilize a whole lot of vibrato. They're going to look at it like an ornament. So if you look back to our lessons or our discussions on ornamentation and how that fits within music, that's how it also fits within improvisation here. It's used as an ornament. And so there are regional variants throughout Ireland. And I'm going to get these pronunciations wrong, but there's the Slab Luchra and then the Donegal fiddle. And so, if I memory serves correctly, one of these is more local to the northern part of Ireland, while the other is reserved for the more southern part of Ireland, excuse me. And so these embellishments then are going to be based on region. And so these embellishments are going to vary greatly depending on where you find these genres of fiddling, but also these are going to vary greatly from the old time tradition that we just initially talked about when it comes to fiddling. And so here you can hear an example of that. And so you'll find a similar name in addition to a new name. But anyways, go to YouTube and type in The High Reel Set by Alistair Fraser and Natalie Haas, and that will bring up the video of this example that you can watch. Okay, so gospel music is another place where we see improvisation being an integral part of that musical experience. But for whatever reason, again, the author does not address it. So I thought it important to add it into the material. So um, gospel music finds its roots as a means of music for people who are not able to easily read or access music. And so this is specifically derived from this idea of hymns that we find. And so the idea with hymns is that they're very homophonic, right? So things line up very vertically, so they're easy to learn for people, right? So this goes beyond that. What is music that people are going to be able to learn within a spiritual context that's going to make it easy to learn? And so see, excuse me, we specifically see this kind of music come out of the mass revival movement starting back in the 1870s. And since then, we've seen multiple revival movements. But historically speaking, we look at the revival movement in the 1870s as where gospel comes out of. And so um, this music then originates not only as a way for people en masse to enjoy it, but it's also a way to draw people to the church. And so um, these churches are using popular musicians and popular songs to draw people to these religious experiences. And so we cite this specifically within the Pentecostal church. So now, when you look at this idea of revivals, it's generally associated with the denomination of the Pentecostal church. And so, gospel as we know it is actually kind of coined by two African American women, Rosetta Tharpe and Arizona Drains. And so, this idea of gospel kind of moving from this church-centered idea to more of an artist-centered idea, the way we think of it now, is going to be out of the really the 20s through the 70s. It takes about 50 years to develop. And so Rosetta Tharpe and Arizona Drains are both fabulous artists within their own right. But Rosetta Tharpe is really going to be well known for rock and roll initially, and Arizona Drains is going to be really well known for ragtime. And so that to say, um, we see this again, appropriation within music in general. Gospel music starts within African American churches. It's then taken by white churches and kind of spun into this country-esque really idea in the white church, but its origins are still within the context of this mass revival. Okay, so a good example of um, improvisation within a piece of gospel music is going to be I Love the Lord by Whitney Houston. Again, if you type this into YouTube, you'll be able to pull up a video. I know for a fact this is also on Spotify. So you can also look it up using Spotify. Okay, so then we also have to talk about improvisation in non-Western music, and this is material that will be on your test. Improvisation in non-Western music is way more common than it actually is in Western music, believe it or not. Some of these cultures, that's the main basis for all of their music. Whereas with music nowadays, and especially pop music, we still find that it's based on the 12 bar blues, however loosely. And so we're going to look specifically at two general traditions of improvisatory music. We'll look at Indian music and we'll look at Arabic music. Okay, so Arabic improvisatory music is going to use the maqam. It's a type of scale system. So you think about if we're equating this to Western terms, our scale system is based on 7 tones, right? C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So the maqam is going to be something that's very similar to this, but it's not going to be the exact same thing, right? We can't generalize the entire world's music based on a Western idea. So, anyways, the maqam is going to be a similar type of scale system, but it's going to be different relations between notes and different notes altogether. Then an instrument that they're going to use is going to be an oud. This is going to be very similar to a lute. The picture you see on this slide is in fact a lute. It is not an oud. So make sure you don't confuse the two. I would strongly recommend if you're interested go ahead and Google what an oud looks like and compare the two. So in Western music, we see this idea of polyphonic textures of thematic development within religious music. This is not the case within this type of improvisatory music. And so small groups or collections of pitches are going to be the foundation for a piece of music. This may be used as a cluster chord where multiple pitches are played simultaneously. It could be fashioned into some sort of thematic idea. It could also be that the musician just knows this small set of pitches, and that's what they base their entire melody on. It's going to get presented in different ways. When you listen to these examples, then again, listen to what is happening instead of for what you think is going to happen, right? Chances are you're not used to hearing this kind of music, so it's going to sound different to your ear, and that's okay. Um, Improvisation always occurs within the present. We think about it as a present art form, and so when we talk about past, present, and future, um, improvisation is in the present. We can't see what's going to happen, but we also can't sit back on what we've heard before. It's never going to be quite the same as what's happened in the past. Excuse me. So then go ahead and listen to Makam Kurd. This is going to be a traditional Arabic improvisation, and this will be found on your Spotify playlist. Okay, so Indian improvisatory music is going to be generally split into two larger groups of music. And so we can look at Hindustani music and we can look at Carnatic music. And so Hindustani music is generally associated with northern India, and there's going to be a bit of an Arabic influence on this kind of music. And if you think about geographically where these two musics converge, it makes sense that there's going to be influence from one to the other. Carnatic music then is going to be more specifically located in southern India. Because of a distance now geographically, there's going to be less of an Arabic influence, and there is going to be more of a variety of this kind of music just because of its association with being classically Indian. And so again, I don't want to overgeneralize this kind of music, but that's usually how we associate it. Okay, so Indian improvisatory music specifically is going to be derived from religious texts, specifically from Vedic religious texts. And so Vedas is going to predate our idea of the our modern idea of Hinduism. And so we're looking at 1500 to 500 BC specifically. So really before our concept of um, time, as it were, but also way before our concept of where we associate music within um, churches within the Western context, right? Significantly before then. And if we look at music historically, music exists way before we get to the medieval period, right? So we're looking at people writing about music like Aristotle, Socrates, Plato. All of these people are well known for writing about music that exists way before even our concept of religious music. Anyways, um, Vedas, again, is going to predate this. And so this is where a lot of this music is going to be influenced by different Indian instruments that we see used then are going to be the sitar, the tambura, and the tabla. On the right, you can see that there's a picture of the sitar. I would highly recommend that you Google any one of these instruments and kind of see them being used. It's amazing, frankly, how they get played. What I do as a violinist and violist is kind of similar to a sitar or a way that they play, but it to me, it's way more virtuosic than what I do simply because the instrument is larger. So their hand has to move a lot more to be able to play. Okay, and so the raga then is going to be based on a series of pitches that are more complex and subtle than a scale. So we talk about this Western idea of a scale being 7 pitches, and each pitch has a specific distance orally between it. And we talk about this spacing being an interval. So the raga is going to have significant can have way more pitches than just 7, but then the space between these pitches is also going to be different, and it's going to be by a Western standard harder to hear because those intervals will be closer than what we're normally used to hearing. And so, again, we come back to this direct idea of there being a relationship between this kind of music and these Vedic texts. And so, ragas are going to exist for different times of day, seasons per year, special occasions. This is almost equatable to the mass. If you think about the proper and the ordinary of the mass, how the ordinary is something that we see from day to day, but then the proper is based on the different feasts or different times of years. The proper specifically is going to be kind of equatable to the raga, even though we're talking about two different religions. And so these types of music will have a generally speaking typical performance sequence. And so there will be this type of music is going to have something that's very ethereal, excuse me, in the beginning or dreamlike. And then once a melody is introduced, it's going to be very rhythmic and much more wanting to tap your toe to it. And then within this type of music, it's almost like a relief or palate cleanser, but these more energetic sections will often be met with a calmer section. So you can go ahead and listen to this example. Okay, we don't need that. And so with that, that's going to finish your second or your third lecture rather for this chapter. Please feel free to send me an email if you have any questions. I'm also available for office hours if you need to arrange to meet with me. I have gone ahead and extended your test by a couple of days. So that is now going to be due by 11:55 on December 2nd.